Hi, so in this video I want to talk about the concept of eternal oblivion, and I've talked about this concept before, and hopefully this time I'll add maybe some different thoughts to it, or so the concept of eternal oblivion, it says that a person when a person's life ends, it is an ab- there is an absolute loss of consciousness or any kind of sentient experience that the person normally has in their with their own subjective perspective of the world, the way they see it with their own conscious mind. So eternal oblivion says that there is an absolute end of this consciousness, and there is a similarity drawn. When people often talk about it, they draw a similarity of this state after a person's life to they draw the similarity to what the experience of that person might have been like before the person was born. So, and they say that what very in a very simple way, they say that what happens to a person after death is the same thing that happened to a person before they were born. Now, that's in my opinion, that's a very simplistic way of looking at things, and it just doesn't really it just I don't feel that strongly about this, and I'm going to talk about a few of my thoughts on this and why I feel that it doesn't work that well. So, okay, the first thing that really uh, okay, so the idea of an absolute loss of consciousness or the experience of nothingness, that's a paradoxical idea. Experiencing nothingness, does nothingness have to be experienced? Can a person who is absolutely not conscious, can such a person even experience nothingness? Does it have to be experienced to exist, or can nothingness exist without any kind of experience or any kind of observer or any kind of conscious entity observing the nothingness? And if there is a need for an observer, well, then how exactly is that nothingness? Because the concept of nothingness is itself uh, so flimsy. It doesn't really, it's completely undefined. It attempts to undefine itself the moment you try to define it. It's a tricky thing trying to grasp at this idea of nothingness, or um, because sort of in a way, in a simplistic way, when you say nothingness, you're still implying the existence of something. So it becomes, it becomes kind of twisting and turning on itself. So there you have a bit of a problem with that. And um, so yeah, and another problem with this, if there is the idea of eternal oblivion after that, after death, meaning that that is it. It's just one life, and that there is nothing afterwards. And people making that, adding that idea that before your birth there was absolute nothingness, for an before birth there was also an eternal oblivion. Now there is a problem, because if there was an eternal oblivion before a person is born, then how can a person be born? It would have continued on for an eternity. At what point did eternity end? Can an eternal amount of time, can it come to an end? I don't know. That's kind of an idea that sort of attempts to undefine itself. It sort of feels that way. So yeah, if a person was, if after life and before birth it was the same eternal oblivion, then how can a person be born? And if a person did get born, and if an eternal oblivion ended, then was it eternal? And after if there is if there is an absolute loss of consciousness, can as human beings, we haven't really experienced an absolute, like you could say during the state of sleep, in dreamless sleep, that you are in an that there is no consciousness. But I don't feel, like me personally, from the way I feel about it, is that there isn't really um, a, a, any period of time where there is zero consciousness. Like even when you are sleeping in dreamless sleep, I still feel there is some amount of consciousness. There is some sense of existence. There is a sense of passage of time. Like now, you could say, like hypothetically, that there was during the state of dreamless sleep, there is a loss of consciousness, but maybe in some way your mind retroactively fills it up to make you think that there wasn't. But I feel that is, yeah, I feel that's a bit, yeah, it adds a bit too much. It's not, yeah, it just requires too much to assume such a thing. So, yeah, in that way, we haven't really, none of us has really experienced nothingness. So if that, for such a concept to exist, to be able to say it with absolute certainty, some people say it with certainty that there is going to be, there will be nothing after death. But how could you know such a thing? You have never experienced nothingness. You could not say such a thing and be so certain about it and then say that that is rational because you haven't experienced it. So, so yeah, in my, the way I feel about it is that it's a really cynical and pessimistic way to think about consciousness, because the very idea of being conscious and sentient and to be able to experience life, to be able to have our own subjective experience, the way we see the world, our thoughts, our ideas, the way we perceive all the beautiful things around the world, these are not cynical things. These are beautiful things. And if we are capable of this kind of beautiful, conscious um, awareness, maybe you can hope that something beautiful could be on the other side of it. Maybe there was something before it. And okay, I'm going to get a little bit, not too rational here, but maybe you could think that maybe you were aware before your birth. It's just that you didn't come into this existence with the memories of it. Like using the word memories kind of loosely here, because it can be kind of tricky, because we are talking about something in different realms and different types of existence with maybe different um, with different internal logics, in a way that the word logic itself becomes hard to define, in because if these conscious modes of existence are changing, maybe the logic of it, the way we perceive logic, it itself begins to change, like it happens in dreams. Like when we're dreaming, um, the dream logic and the way the dream world interacts with you, and the way our minds create this world and communicate with it. It can create so many different ways, that um, ways of logic, and dreams have their own rationality, which makes perfect sense in the dream world. But when we're back, when we're out of it, well, you think like, oh, okay, that was something different. So yeah, so what I mean to say is, it's to say eternal oblivion exists with so much certainty. I think it is so cynical. Why are humans, why, as a human being who is capable of all these beautiful things, why have such a cynical worldview? Why not be more positive about it? Why not enjoy life while we have it? Like, I understand when people say, there are eternal oblivions on both sides of life. In a good way, you can think of it as though you have this life, you can make the most of it, and that's a great thing. So you can take that from the idea of eternal oblivion. but still hope for maybe there is something very different in an afterlife. Maybe when we are there, we'll look back on this life, and I'm kind of in a simplistic way talking about this, but maybe we can look back on this life and think of it as, oh, okay, that was a dream. It felt so real when we were in there, but it was just a dream. So, and maybe then our lives that we live now, they will seem surreal to us and thinking like, oh, that how did I think that that was real? That was so, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe in that way. So yeah, those are just um, a few things that I wanted to say. And yeah, if you have any of your own thoughts on this, on eternal oblivion, on an afterlife, or on any other types of any other ideas or concepts on this continuation of life or cessation of life, and what exactly happens to consciousness, yeah, let me know of your thoughts, because I feel consciousness itself has, again, I feel how it is such a strong experience, isn't it? It's a powerful subjective experience to be sentient and conscious, and for it to just come to an end. Um, Again, like, does it really come to an end, or does it just, does it just shift into something else? It's kind of it's something to think about, because and yeah, so those are just a few thoughts on this, and hopefully this will have been a positive message, and yeah, to think about it rationally, and to be hopeful, and to be grounded in reality as well. Yeah, so those are just a few thoughts on this. If you have any of your own thoughts on this, let me know. And yeah, that's where I'm going to end this video, and I'll see you in the next video.